9 to 5ers. I'm Elizabeth Ajadi. Welcome back to 9 to 5 and Everything in Between Season 2. This season is titled The Ripple Effect: How Diverse Industries Shape Our Careers. We're expanding our horizon to highlight why every industry, no matter how different, has a direct or indirect impact on our professional and personal lives. We believe that understanding these intersections not only enriches our career, but also deepen our perspective as we navigate the multifaceted American and global experience. In this episode, we're going to be deep diving how are these industries shaping your future and mine. The economic and political environment that we find ourselves in right now is wrought with uncertainty. We don't know what to expect day in, day out. I'm going to give you an update on what I've been up to while we've been on a break. I took a 2.5 break off of work and I traveled to Europe, and I genuinely enjoyed myself. So I'm going to go through a workplace scenario that was put together by my operations manager. As a manager, one of your team members emails you expressing frustration about a monotonous routine. I'm going to go through the main conversation, deep diving how these industries are shaping our future, discussing industry trends, and how our consumer behavior is shaping industry trends and vice versa. So buckle up and come with us on this journey. Hello 9 to 5ers, I'm Elizabeth Ajadi, back with 9 to 5 and Everything in Between, the podcast. I'm so excited to be back after a much needed break. I think we took 3 months off before bringing back season 2, and I'm so excited and happy that I took that break to really look back at what we did in season 1, assess and do our lessons learned and build back up for season 2. Took in all the feedback that we received. Thank you so much for everybody who sent feedback. We consulted with people just to assess the brand, assess the value that we proposition, and come back better and stronger with a better production, better messaging, better studio, and just better everything, really. And it's a transformative process, even for me, to be able to see what I can take on and how my mind can really create something different. Before I dive into today's episode, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you to our listeners. You really held it down. You stayed with us. We jumped headfirst into season 1, not knowing what to expect and how we were going to be received. And you all just blew it out of the park. You listened on all podcast platforms. You tuned into the visuals on YouTube and watched and left comments. You engaged. You sent your feedback. Everything we read and we've taken into account for how we have crafted season 2. Without further ado, I'm going to just give you guys an update on what I've been doing the last 3 months, because I've definitely not just been sitting down. I've been working hard at evaluating how I could do things differently, both on the personal front and on the professional side, as well as with the 9 to 5 blueprint and our podcast 9 to 5 and everything in between. So on a personal update, I took a 2.5 break off of work and I traveled to Europe, and it's probably one of the longest breaks that I've taken in a long time, and I genuinely enjoyed myself. I did 6 countries in Europe, 2 of which I've been to before. I went to Paris in France, Rome in Italy before I went to Venice. And so, swung back and, went to these beautiful, beautiful countries, took in the sights, the sounds of Europe. It's just like breathtaking. Went to Amsterdam to meet up with my friend's baby. I have this group of friends that I met when I studied abroad in South Korea, and we, since the last 3 years, I've tried to meet on a yearly basis now. And it's so amazing to see how far we've all come and the growth. And we had the first baby of the group, so obviously we all had to go visit and meet this beautiful, beautiful baby who I call my granddaughter, because we formed a big family when we went to South Korea, and I'm the mother of the group. And so now I have this first grandchild It's just such a beautiful story, really. After that, I went to Brussels for a solo trip, which I haven't done in a while, and I enjoy just like unplugging by myself, walking around the city, going to all the beautiful places, Grand Palace. After that, went to Paris and did the Louvre, the Palace de Versailles, and breathtaking. The art in Paris. It was my first time inside the Louvre, and I don't know what I imagined. I just did not imagine the Louvre being as humongous as it is. With my friend and her family, we only could make it through one section and we were done. Got to see the Mona Lisa, and she's beautiful, but she's quite small, smaller than I anticipated. And there was such a huge crowd there. And I have the funniest story of the Mona Lisa. So there's a huge crowd gathered around, and there are people ushering you to get your pictures. And you're going through, the first row gets their pictures, and they usher them they usher them out of the queue. It's literally like 15 seconds per person. They're like, okay, time to leave. And so I get there, I get this selfie, and it was from an angle, and I like things to feel straight, and I didn't quite like it, and so I went back into the queue, waited another 10-15 minutes to make it through, and then finally got to the front, and this guy says, oh, I'll get the picture for you, and then he takes my phone. Lo and behold, he took it in portrait mode, and Mona Lisa is blurred. So like my face is like so sharp front and center in this picture, and Mona Lisa is just a shadow. It's so funny. I find that so funny. It's a funny experience when I think back to the Louvre, and that pops to my head. I just chuckle. I went to a destination wedding, my first one in Portugal. It was beautiful. The wedding was beautiful. I wore this very beautiful dress. I felt so regal. Taking in the sights and sounds, and then to Lisbon. I love all the beautiful houses. And mind you, I'm bouncing around these different countries where they speak different languages, and it's just very interesting for my brain to switch gears from French to Portuguese and to Italian and to Spanish, because my next stop was Barcelona in Spain. I saw a lot of the Gaudi architecture. Wow, his mind is absolutely beautiful. And after that, went to Rome, saw the Vatican City, the Vatican Museum, and St. Peter's Basilica. Just the day that I'm recording this, it came out that Pope Francis died, and it's just so, surreal that I got to see the Basilica, and then now he's passed. And around the time that we were going, we found out that he was in the hospital, and I was worried that everything was going to be canceled and I would not be able to go to Rome after all, or be at the Vatican City, because there would just be a lot of protocols and things happening. But I'm glad I got to see it in his lifetime, and I pray that his soul rests in peace. And after that, I came straight home and jumped right back into work, right back into picking up where we left off with planning. Meanwhile, my staff was already continuing with groundwork. So if you've been seeing all the social media posts, yeah, that's my team. Has been doing such an amazing job just keeping the page moving and updated with posts while I was gone. So yeah, that's what I've been up to, just traveling, which is my absolute favorite thing to do in the world, just exploring the world, hearing people speak their languages, and just again taking in sights and sounds and the beautiful creation of God. Definitely appreciate it. And I love flying, and the sky is my absolute favorite place in the world. The clouds just feel like the most comfortable bed. I wouldn't jump out though, but yeah. One of the things that travel does for me is it realigns my perspective. Sometimes you're at work, especially working in the US, it's all grind, and sometimes I forget to unplug. And when I travel, I truly unplug. I had my work phone with me, but it died, and I let it die. Like, okay, I'll check in when I get back. It brings things into perspective that, you truly can unplug. You can step away and nothing is going to break. Like, I'm important, but maybe not as important as I think in the grand scheme of things. my team at work would keep doing stuff. Work continues, life continues. That's your reminder, and my reminder to myself and to you as well is like to take breaks, to do what you truly makes your soul happy. Whether it's just going to the beach, whether it's just, going to play a paddle game, whether it's just going to play a pickup game of basketball, whatever it is that would help you unplug and truly distress, I highly recommend it. Right, the agenda for today was one, get through intro, update, chit chat. Like, how's everybody doing? If you are still listening at this point, tell us in the comments, how are you doing and how was Q1 for you? Because going into this episode, we're going into Q2. And so Q1 was wrapping up season 1 for us and reassessing planning for season 2. And so for me, thinking back to my Q1 perspective is all about work, and pause to rethink. And I think Q1 feels like that in a lot of ways, generally speaking, in that with the first quarter, it's almost like a remnant of the previous year, closing out certain things that just could not be finished in the previous year, but also really diving into your plan for the year and then figuring out what's working, what's not for the next 3 quarters. And for me, I think I got a sense of that overall on personal level, on the spiritual level, on the professional level. And when I think about the letter I wrote to myself at the beginning of the year, I think I'm aligning with all of those things. So next thing on my agenda to talk about today is a scenario, because we are 9 to 5 and everything in between. And if you know anything about what would Elizabeth do, it's that we get scenarios and I have to answer them on the spot. Mind you, I haven't read the scenario, by the way, because my social media manager and operations manager just brings this to me, and I like to think on the spot. So the scenario that she put together today is, as a manager, one of your team members emails you expressing frustration about a monotonous routine where daily tasks feel repetitive, leaving no room for creative breaks. What would you advise them to do? So this one is very interesting because I definitely have felt like I'm being in a place where my day-to-day work is very monotonous. For the most part, when I find myself in this zone of just going through invoices, going through paying this, paying that, reviewing this, reviewing that, like my days start to blend into each other and I don't remember what day of the week it is, I tend to raise my hand for projects. When your work starts to get repetitive, I know depending on the role, you might not be fortunate enough to be able to just say, oh, I want to do something different. But for instance, think about payroll managers. Like they have to process payroll every 2 weeks or every twice a month or whatever the case is for the setup of their company. And they have set things that they have to do. And that's pretty much what their role is processing payroll. It can start to feel repetitive as well. So in this case, they can raise their hand to maybe by extension work with their adjacent group in HR, for instance, like, oh, are there special projects that you guys have or need help with that I can support on, and then just start to use that. So one, learn other skills, broaden their knowledge of their adjacent groups within the organization or within their departments, and just be able to get out of their funk that they are in. So I would raise my hand or even just start with expressing interest in taking on special projects so that even if for now nothing comes up, your manager knows that you're interested and would pull you in when such projects open up for your group. So that's how I typically handle things like this, and that's what I typically do. Today's episode, we're talking about the emerging trends, unexpected shifts in various industries and how these industries from tech to finance to healthcare to real estate are subtly influencing our career paths and everyday lives. The environment, the economic and political environment that we find ourselves in right now, both in the US and across the world, is wrought with uncertainty. We don't know what to expect day in, day out. Stocks might drop today, they may rise tomorrow. Uncertainty is just looming. You're trying to retire, you're wondering, is it time? Should I wait? Oh, my retirement funds has just dipped. There's just a lot of uncertainty. And so a lot of the topics that we're focusing on for this season is around emerging trends and shifts within different industries. And in some cases, we're touching about how consumer behavior, in fact, is creating these shifts that we're seeing in today's world. One example that is very top of mind right now is the utilization of social media. For instance, TikTok to influence a lot of our decision making. Just in the last 2 weeks, once the tariffs hit, we saw a lot of creators from China putting out content around how a lot of these expensive luxury brands actually produce have their products produced in China, in factories in China. Perhaps the same factories that produce the unbranded products, and maybe not the same quality of leather or products or whatever, but they're coming from the same places, and they're debunking the perception of luxury in people's minds, and really what the value is that you place on these things, how much you're spending on these things. And I found that to be a very interesting shift. And I personally am watching it to see how it would influence shifts in consumer behavior when it comes to luxury products. I want to talk about some of these emerging trends that are shaping the landscape today. I'll just list out some of the things that I written down. One, the acceleration of AI and automation, big one. The green transition and climate focus, wow, huge impact. Geopolitical realignments and trade fragmentation. Yeah, I just talked about all the tariffs and the impacts of that. Shifting demographics, again, aging population and new workforce. And the fifth one actually is tied together with the fourth one. That is the workforce evolution and skills transformation. Skills transformation is somewhat related to the first point about AI. And so all of these things are interconnected. Some of the impacts that we're seeing with these major trends that I've just pulled out or mentioned are: one, policy uncertainty. I'm sure policy writers are having the hardest times these days, because it's like, what are we writing about? Like, what are we putting into action? They must be having sleepless nights during this period. Inflation. We don't know where it's going. In some ways, you're like, okay, no, we're getting a handle of inflation. Things are going back to normal. Prices going down. And then the next week, it's like, oh no, things are back up. Eggs being very scarce is not something that was on my 2025 bingo card, but here we are. Slowing divergent growth. And for a generation that's so used to having things fast, it sure is uncertain and uncomfortable to have to deal with watching things just take shape very slowly. Let's go back and discuss these things. And one of the things that I want you to take away from this conversation today is, how does this impact me? What can I do differently? And how can I plan for the future, despite not knowing where this is going? And this is a conversation, and I want you guys to chime in the comment section on your thoughts on a lot of these things that I'm pulling out. The acceleration of AI and automation. They say we are the computer age, and in my lifetime, I've experienced the flip phone, the Nokia 3310, the very huge phone, the wired phone, then the cell phone, the BlackBerry, the iPhone, the Samsungs, just the Android. And I've seen such an evolution only in the last 25 years of my lifetime. And it's actually interesting how things have changed so rapidly in just this short period. And when I think about AI, only just in the last 4 years ago, when I started to understand AI and how Siri on our phones is an AI. And it was not a thought that it was not something that I ever thought about, even after having used the iPhone for the longest time. It was just not something, oh, now that I said that, she spoke up and started to say something. Siri is very nosy. Only in my lifetime, and seeing how even voice control technology is taking over, and you're driven by artificial intelligence and a lot of this technology behind the scenes. And I'm not a subject matter expert on AI, but I'm very open to learning. But one thing is that it's shifting and changing how we consume things. Like my phone, if I need to set up something or set a reminder, I just say, "Hey Siri, add this to my calendar." It's like, oh, for what day? I don't even need to pick up my phone. Having auto lights in the house, I just have to say, "Hey Alexa, turn on kitchen light, reduce the heater," or do these things. It's becoming so embedded in our daily lives that you can't help but think about, who am I becoming overtly dependent on this technology, or is this just useful for me to take away redundant tasks? Food for thought, really. Just something to think about. That's one angle. The other angle is I think about is how it's transforming industries and how what that means for jobs. You know, a lot of people talk about AI taking over jobs, and I think about it like, no, not really. It's a technology, and jobs are forever evolving. Like a lot of the jobs that they used to do in the 80s, 90s, it's no longer relevant today because they've been transformed, they've been rebranded, and AI technology overall has taken over some of the redundant aspects of things so that we can use our brains a little bit more. The question is, are we using our brains a little bit more, or are we becoming heavily dependent on these technologies? So that's one rhetoric question that I want to throw out there for you, is that think about how you can actually become subject matter experts of these technologies instead of being dependent on these technologies, in that you use them more than you consume them more than you utilize them to sharpen your skills or to even master them. Chatbots, personalized recommendations, even ChatGPT, Gemini. I use Gemini a lot. When I write stuff, I might put it there to proofread it, just to read it for tone and things. I'd always used Grammarly for emails and stuff, and now I have this second assistant in Gemini that can help me refine things, and it's just mind blowing, right? My second point about green transition and climate focus, this is something that we've definitely been hearing a lot about over the last few decades. Earth is, I don't want to say dying, but Earth is ill, and we need to do our parts in ensuring that we are monitoring our consumption. There's something to be said for overconsumption in our generation. We tend to go for one-time use things that it can be one and done, and that's it. And so we have clothes that are filling the landfill because we're just consuming so much, we're buying so much, not using it to its full extent until we discard or change it and buy something else. So there's something to be said for our consumption, and a lot of policies are changing, and depending on who's in government, it depends on how much focus is put into future proofing and investing in climate change and the green transition. I definitely try to do my part in making sure that the supply of my electricity to my home is from a green supplier. There are so many options out there to do, and one day I plan on installing solar once my neighbor cuts off their tree that's blocking the sun. But once I'm able to do that, I will be able to create my own energy from natural sources, the sun, and be able to push back into the grid to actually sell back to people. I'll become a producer of energy at that point. So think about in your daily consumption, in your daily life, how are you contributing to climate waste, and what can you be doing differently? The focus on green transition, it does not necessarily mean a bad thing for everybody or us. A lot of the things that this means is that it would create jobs as well. You could become a, I don't know, climate change engineer or something. Like, don't quote me on that. But I'm sure that there are a lot of roles when it comes to policy, when it comes to the engineering of it in different aspects, re-engineering products, re-engineering battery, even our computers, the things that we use. Would but just production overall, there is definitely an opportunity in every industry for a role in climate transition. My third point on geopolitical realignments and trade fragmentation, when I think about the US China subtle trade war that's ongoing, or not so subtle, if I'm being honest, it's creating a lot of shift. Who's aligning with who? You have to pay attention to these things because it could create maybe good or bad partnerships, depending on the organizations that you work for, where are their factories located, what does this mean for you as an employee? The US wants to bring production to the States, and what does that mean for manufacturers? What does that mean for pricing? What does that mean for logistics companies that used to, shipping across the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, and all of these things? There's just a lot of things that it would affect. So you have to think about how these things could impact you. So think about the tariffs and what it means for even pricing, or what it means for getting things as fast as you always used to get them. And think about small businesses as well. I think small businesses would feel the impact more than large businesses, because large corporations can, swallow the cost in one way or the other, but smaller businesses would be impacted greatly because they would struggle to thrive when their expenses start to outweigh their revenue. The fourth one of shifting demographics, and I'm going to combine this with my last one on workforce evolution and skills transformation. So, when you think about the demographic, I remember when I was at my previous company and I was having a conversation with somebody, he said, a lot of people would need to retire in the next 5 years. And from what I know of that organization right now, they have been offering volunteer retirement package to people to be able to leave earlier. And so there's an aging workforce that is aging out of the work environment, and then there's a new crop of people. But do we have enough workforce to fill the gaps that the aging population are going to leave behind? There's talent shortages everywhere. Even if there's no shortage, it's more like there's a shortage in that skill gap that companies are really looking for. If you go on LinkedIn today, you would see millions of job openings, and some of them have been up for months, and you wonder, what are they looking for? And you see that hundreds of people have applied. They're looking for this unicorn that would help them save on costs versus having to hire a slew of 5 to 10 people. They would rather hire, that unicorn in that field. Shifting demographics definitely impacting the labor market for sure. The strain on Social Security, because, with aging population, it means that Social Security has to start coughing up payments. Perhaps they borrowed our money. Anyway, moving on to the last one on workforce evolution. Again, there's been a lot of conversation about the future of work and this whole remote or hybrid model that people are advocating for. I'm definitely an advocate of a hybrid work environment, because I truly believe in being able to be flexible with work, but I know not a lot of people appreciate that, especially organizations. And I work in a real estate company. We have commercial real estate, we have multifamily for people to live in, we have hospitality, and so we don't want offices to sit empty. And so we're not huge advocates for remote work or hybrid, because that means it discourages companies leasing, and that's going to impact us financially. And so an organization like mine would definitely not advocate for hybrid or remote work. And I definitely see how this could impact society economically, eventually, and we have a conversation in a few episodes talking about that. I'm going to be interviewing a real estate broker, and we're going to be diving deep into this topic on real estate, touch on remote work and consumer behavior and how that's impacting real estate. Overall, one thing that I've noticed overall is like policy uncertainty. I've talked about that a little bit. Just because of different abrupt policy changes. It's impacting a lot and with very little time to react. And so I guess you have to think about, who's in office, what are their policies likely to be like, how can I plan ahead, and how could this impact me? If you need a financial advice, talk to a financial advisor. If you need real estate, talk to a real estate agent. Do deep dives, research online. Google is your best friend. ChatGPT, Gemini. All of the GPTs are very resourceful in diving deep into the World Wide Web and getting information to us at our fingertips. Inflation, I talked about how eggs are so expensive. I don't know why I keep talking about eggs, but yeah, that was a big shock to me when I went grocery shopping this past weekend. Lastly is, economic growth, divergent growth. When we start to think about how things are changing, it's been very hard to recover post-COVID, just with the impact of COVID that lasted over 2 years. We're still recovering, and to just be hit with another uncertainty when we're not even back to pre-COVID times, it is quite alarming and an uncertain situation that we find ourselves in. But I truly, truly hope that as a world that we're able to come together and do the best for people and put people at the forefront of every policy change, every decisions that we make. Last portion that I want to talk about is like, how does this affect you as an everyday person? I think I've touched on a lot of these things. Cost of living, definitely inflation has impacted that greatly. Housing is high, groceries expensive, gas is expensive, everything is expensive. So plan better, don't dip into your savings for unnecessary expenses. If it's not a need, if it's a want, you want to probably pause on that expense before making that purchase. To job security and career paths, research career paths that have longevity, giving the change that is occurring now. Look at your job that you have today. Even go to a chat GPT, go to Gemini, go to chat GPT and say, hey, I work in this role, and knowing that there's a lot of shifts in the technology space, what should I be doing differently to fill my skill gap? Ask it these questions, have a conversation with the GPT. It definitely is useful in giving you insights in how you should be preparing and what roles you should be preparing, and even what courses that you need to be taking to upskill yourself so that you are not at a disadvantage. Third thing, borrowing costs. Oh my God, rising costs of interest rates. I can't stress it enough. I'm so glad I bought my car pre-COVID, and I'm so glad I'm about to pay it off and I was able to get a good interest rate. But I know for people taking on new car notes, interest rates are ridiculous right now. And pay down your credit card debt. Like I said, don't buy unnecessary things. You can, it's your money, you work hard for it, but hey, you want to future-proof your life. So I strongly advise not to spend what you don't have to. Savings and investments, diversify your portfolio. There's no sure portfolio. There's no, oh my God, if I put my money in this, everybody told me it's gonna work, it's a sure bet. No, it's not. Okay? Diversify your portfolio as much as you can. For retirement, a lot of people are hitting the retirement age, and some people are forced to now work a few more years because of the dip in their retirement fund, in their 401k. And so now they have to think about, okay, should I work a few more years? Should I get something small, or retire now and just see if I can get back into the workforce and do something simple in a few years? It's a lot to think about, and I would strongly say talk to a financial advisor at this time. Personal well-being. One of the reasons I took the break that I did is because I was starting to just feel this pressure, not economically, just everything. It just seemed like there's just a lot going on, uncertainty at work, uncertainty in personal life, and just a lot of volatile news, really, and it was really starting to mess up with me and stressing me out, and I was at risk of burnout. It came at the right time. And I almost canceled, but I'm glad I did not because I really needed that break. So I strongly recommend you taking a break if you need it. We've talked about, a lot of emerging trends, the acceleration of AI and automation, green transition, just a lot of things and how it impacts you. One key takeaway that I have for you is that, do what works best for you. With a lot of these changes, it means that we do have to be more cognizant of making smart decisions, make intelligent decisions. Don't be overtly impulsive. Talk to your friends, talk to your close confidants, talk to your mentor, soundboard with them, listen to what they have to say. All of this uncertainties are cyclical. We have high times, we have low times, and what makes and breaks us is how we react to them, how we prepare ourselves and our lives. To wrap up, one thing I want to say is your life is in your hands, and it is up to you to make the decisions and to set yourself up for the future that you want. You are the architect of your journey, okay? And subscribe to us on our podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and go check out all of our social media platforms at the 9 to 5 Blueprint to tune into every news that we put out. Till next time, I'm your host, Elizabeth Ajani, and I'm so glad to be back. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this episode with a friend. Thank you so much, and have a good day.